Just be yourself. That's probably the most common piece of advice professionals hear today. If you want to communicate online, share your expertise and build a personal brand, you'll find so many people saying the same thing. Just be authentic. Just show up as you are now. Of course, that sounds sensible. It sounds inspiring. It sounds almost comforting, doesn't it? But many years ago, standing on a stage in a pair of yellow stockings, I discovered why that advice can actually go really badly wrong. And the strange thing is that that lesson from that moment years ago turns out to be surprisingly relevant for professionals who are trying to communicate their expertise today. So when I was just 19 years old, I played the role of Malvolio in Shakespeare's Twelfth Night. Now, Malvolio is not a particularly cheerful character, you might say. He's what's known as a Puritan, a moralist, the sort of man who walks into a really lively party and then tells everyone, "Could you please quieten down?" He disapproves of music, he disapproves of laughter, and he disapproves of just about everybody else in the play. Now, because I was only 19 at the time, the director, who was a very clever chap, told me to grow a beard and wear a long black gown to make me look slightly older and more severe. And I remember the sensation of that costume really clearly, the soft velvet gown brushing against the floor as I walked, the slightly scratchy feeling of the beard that had newly sprouted on my 19 years young chin, the feeling of trying to inhabit someone who was in temperament, almost the diametric opposite of me. Now, actors often get credit for their remarkable ability to create a character, but the truth really is a little different, because the real structure already exists. It's right there in the script. The words of the play and then the action that each character takes provide what you might call the emotional architecture. And this defines the rhythm of each scene and the play as a whole, the relationships between the characters, the underlying tensions, and even the humour. And it's the actor's task really to bring that structure to life so that the audience can feel it. In effect, to act as a kind of a bridge between the written words, which in Shakespeare's case were written many hundreds of years ago, and the living imagination of the audience in today's world. And when that bridge is strong and clear and works just as it should, then something quite magical happens. The audience recognizes the characters deeply, intimately, and meaningfully. Now, here I am in the Shakespeare play, and let me tell you, it was uncomfortable because it's one of the most famous scenes in Twelfth Night, and it revolves around a practical joke that is played on Malvolio. Malvolio secretly believes that the lady of the house, Olivier, might be in love with him, which is, frankly speaking, wildly optimistic. Some might even say delusional. And all the other characters know it, everybody knows it, and so they decide to exploit it. And they forge a letter, supposedly written by Olivia, which Malvolio discovers one day while he's walking in the woods. And that letter contains instructions from the supposed Olivia. Now, these are very specific instructions. "If you truly love me," she says, "wear yellow stockings and what are known as cross garters." You can see them here. Now, this detail is important, because in Shakespeare's time, yellow stockings were considered pretty ridiculous. And cross garters, which are these straps that you can see tied around the legs, well, they made poor old Malvolio's entire outfit look absurd. So Malvolio struts and preens on stage wearing this extraordinary canary-coloured cross-gartered combo, yellow stockings stretched tight across his calves, cross garters wrapping around his legs like little ribbons wrapped around a couple of turkey necks. And Malvolio, he's convinced that this outfit will reveal his devotion and win Olivia's heart. Now, unfortunately for Malvolio, Olivia's heart remains rather firmly focused on entirely another man. And the audience, of course, understands this situation perfectly, which is precisely why they laugh. Not because Malvolio in a sense is foolish, but because the structure of the scene and the tension between the characters makes the situation unmistakably clear and unmistakably comical. Everyone in the theatre knows what is happening, except for Malvolio. Now, during one particular performance, something very strange happened. I was standing there on stage in these yellow stockings with those cross-gartered, feeling the warmth of the theatre lights on my face. I could hear the audience laughing, rows of people in that strange void of darkness somewhere out there beyond the footlights, laughter moving across the stage like a wave, and suddenly something shifted. My character, Malvolio, suddenly just disappeared, and for a moment the entire structure of the play vanished, and I was just standing there, myself, a young actor in ridiculous yellow stockings with several hundred people laughing. Well, it felt briefly but painfully as though they were laughing at me. And I remember this feeling of a wave of heat rising up from my neck and washing over my face as I turned what must have been a very bright red. That embarrassment just spreading unstoppably. And I tried desperately to re-enter the structure of the scene, to find the character of Malvolio again, to step back into the architecture of the play. And it took me really several minutes to do so. But eventually the rhythm returned. The words of Shakespeare's magical script caught me again like a safety net, and the scene continued. Now, that moment taught me something very important. Actors don't walk onto a stage as themselves, because that would be an incredibly exposed position. Instead, they step into a structure. Their script, their character, their actions all align to provide the architecture. And it's the actor's job to bring that structure to life so that the audience can recognise what it is that they're seeing. Now, professional and business communication works in a surprisingly similar way. Experts, of course, have expertise, but unless that expertise is expressed clearly enough that people recognise it, then nothing much happens. Now, this is where the advice to just be yourself becomes downright dangerous. In fact, it's possibly as delusional as poor old Malvolio himself. Now, of course, honesty is valuable, but honesty without structure, well, that can just create confusion. Our ideas can wander. Our messages, they can just drift out into the void. And our audience, or in our case, our market, it doesn't understand really what it's supposed to be looking at. Now, our goal here is not to invent some sort of beefed up persona, but to give our thinking really enough structure and our actions enough clarity of purpose that people really can recognise our value. In other words, to allow our expertise to become visible. Actors don't just walk onto a stage hoping that the audience will somehow understand them. No, they step into a structure that allows the audience to recognise the story. Now, professionals communicating today really face a very similar challenge. And sometimes our first step is not trying harder to be ourselves, it's learning how to give our expertise a shape that people can actually see and feel. And then we'll never find ourselves embarrassingly exposed as I was on stage that day. Then in effect, we'll become the lead character in the unfolding story of our business lives.